إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم آمين اللهم آمين اللهم آمين. أما بعد، فيقول تعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. ويقول تعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنما المؤمنون الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم وإذا تليت عليهم آياته زادتهم إيمانا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, the reminder that we have today comes from Surah Al-Anfal, the 8th surah in the Quran. Now this surah was revealed right after, like during the Battle of Badr. And to understand the implications of this surah, to understand the weight of the message, you have to understand the context in which the surah is revealed. You have to understand the events leading up to this, leading up to the revelation of this surah. So this is in and around about 12 or 13 years after revelation has begun. So the Prophet Mohamed ﷺ, at the age of 40 years old, is in the cave. Jibreel comes and squeezes him. We know the narration. Iqra ma ana biqari. Read. He said, I don't know how to read. We know this. Revelation comes. The next 3 years, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is commanded to then build the support group around him. Build the strength, the immediate family, the people that are closest to you. Build them. Give da'wah to them. And so that's when we have Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha accepting Islam. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu accepting Islam. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. From these people. Your core support group. After 3 years, now start giving da'wah to your family, your tribe. So the Prophet ﷺ gives da'wah to Banu Hashim, right? The tribe that he came from. Then after, in and around the 4th year, da'wah opens up to everyone. And it's in that 3rd and 4th year when he starts to give da'wah to his family, does he realize the backlash that he's going to receive. He starts to see in action exactly what Warqa bin Nawfal told him. Warqa, the family member of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went to after receiving revelation, he tells the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Ya Rasulullah, well he doesn't say Rasulullah because the da'wah hasn't been happening to there. He says, I wish I would be alive at the time when your people will kick you out so that I could support you. And the Prophet ﷺ says, my people? You have to understand how crazy of an idea this is. We're talking about the peak of tribalism in the Arab society at that time. That the family meant everything. Your family, your tribe is who you were. It was what made or broke every single situation, boiled down to that. He said, my people will kick me out? And he is the grandson of Abdul Muttalib. Right? The grandson grandson of one of the greatest leaders the Arabs had seen. Right? Respected in all of Arabia. And he says, yeah, your people will kick you out. Because that's the nature. When you come with the truth, when you come with change, you're met with rejection. Right? People try to push and push and push. And so he sees this when he starts to give down to his family, where Abu Lahab, la'anahullah, Abu Lahab starts to make fun of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But then in and around the 4th year, now da'wah spreads to everyone, right? The Prophet is commanded, now give da'wah to everyone. So the Prophet gets on top of the mountain of Safa, right? And he calls his people. You know the narration. And da'wah opens up to everyone. And people start accepting Islam. Many people start accepting Islam. What was once 13 Muslims now became 40 Muslims. And at this point, the Muslims start to get persecuted, tortured, killed. There were families that were together that were killed. Tortured Bilal radiallahu ta'ala. Tortured many other Sahaba. There was one Sahabi, the way that they would torture him is they would drag his body, they would rake his body across red coals. You know, coal is usually black. Until you get it really hot, it turns red. In the time of the Khilafah of Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when things got good, when Islam began to spread, finances are coming in, and Islam became what we would call in the modern era, the word that we would use for it, Islam became a superpower, what you would say, right? Where they started to really grow and grow. Umar ibn Khattab would call that Sahabi and say, come, I need to see your back. And he would show him his back so he could be humble. That this came through that sacrifice. This came through that sacrifice, through that trial. And so they're being tortured. They would tie up, they tortured one of the Sahabiyat, radiallahu ta'ala anha. They tortured her so much she went blind. And then after she went blind, they would tie her up to a tree and they would leave her there on that tree for 24 or 48 hours without any food. And they would come and bring food and they would move it in front of her face. And they would say, who's going to help you today? And she would say, my Allah will help me. One day they came and they left the food beside her. She's tied to the tree and they would leave it beside her so that she could smell it after being pushed to starvation. One day they came and the rope that they tied her with was done. And she was sitting down under the tree eating from the food. And they were shocked. And she could see again. And she said, I told you my Allah would help me. This is the state of the Muslims. It got to the point where the Muslims were persecuted so much, they had to flee Mecca as refugees. This is when they went to Abyssinia, Eastern Africa. This is when they went to Abyssinia. And they stayed there. A lot of times we don't realize how heavy this was. Because from those people who had to flee is Uthman ibn Affan, him and his wife. And who was his wife? Ruqayya, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can you imagine your daughter being pulled away from you, being snatched from you out of fear for her life? And we know the situation of Surah Al-Najm. The Prophet was reading Surah Al-Najm in the Haram, near the Kaaba. And all of the Quraysh were so enamored and impacted by the Quran that they all went into sajda. Right? It's a longer narration, but this is what happens. After this, the word spreads to Habasha, Abyssinia. And some of the Muslims come back because the rumor spreads that the Meccans have accepted Islam. because they all fell into sajda. They get there and they realize that that wasn't the case, right? That wasn't the case. And so can you imagine? Your daughter is pushed away as a refugee. Your closest supporters, your allies. One of the people there was also Jabir. The Prophet said about him, you look like me and you act like me. He was very beloved to the Prophet. They come back and they're excited. We get to come back home. And they realize that's not the case, and so they have to go back to Abyssinia. Now imagine, as a parent, your child has to leave you out of fear for their life. And then a few years pass, and you get to see them again for a few moments. This is before the phone. This is before video calls. You haven't heard their voice. You haven't seen their face in years. And the Prophet ﷺ finally gets to see his daughter again. And she has to leave right away. Because the situation in Mecca is too harsh. Shortly after, you have Amul Huzn, the year of sorrow. In this year, this is after the boycott, right? Oh, more than 2 years boycotted. It became illegal in Mecca to do business with the Muslims, to give food to the Muslims. They were kicked outside of the city of Mecca, where they stayed in the valley of Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet. After that, his number one support, his ally, his confidant, the person he could speak to, the person that supported him emotionally, spiritually, financially, his number one supporter, Khadija radiallahu anha, passes away. Many of the narrations mention that the boycott that happened before was a big reason for that. Because people were malnourished for over 2 years. She passes away. A couple of weeks pass, and then his number one ally in protecting and pushing away the Quraysh, his uncle Abu Talib, passes away. Now the Prophet ﷺ has a target on his back. And so he goes to Ta'if. The Meccans find out about this. Ta'if was it was the second biggest tribe, second biggest city there in Arabia at that time. But they were also rivals with Mecca. And so when the Prophet ﷺ was coming back from Ta'if, the Meccans hear of this. And they see that the Prophet ﷺ went to the rivals for support. And so then they decide, we're going to kill him. We're going to kill him. And this is where the Prophet, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to the Prophet ﷺ, tell the Muslims to go. You have to leave your homes now. Right? And we have the Pledge of Allegiance that happens with the people of Yathrib, the people that we now call the city Medina. And they end up going. The Muslims go. But the Prophet ﷺ himself can't go. The Prophet can only leave after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him the command to leave. So the Prophet ﷺ stays back, him and Abu Bakr. So you see, there's torture, there's persecution, there's getting kicked out as refugees. We have refugees in this day and age, unfortunately. Have you ever met a refugee? You have nothing. Whether it be the Palestinian refugees, the Syrian refugees, Burmese refugees, the Chinese refugees. Yeah, refugees, so many countries are going through so much struggle. India, so many. If you've ever met a refugee, what do they have? Nothing. Nothing. Because the only thing you own is what you can carry with you. And when you're a refugee, it's not like you're leaving on vacation. You're going to pack all of your stuff, you're going to put it in the car, you're going. Everything you own has been destroyed. You know, subhanAllah, business people will tell you one of the smartest things that you can invest in is property. One, obviously it's different, subjective. They'll tell you this is one of the smartest things you can invest in. And it is one of the biggest financial purchases you'll make in your entire life. The majority of your finances will go to buying a house. Can you imagine these refugees lose that? Their houses are bombed, destroyed, gone. And so now this is the state of the Meccans. When they're leaving to Medina, they don't have credit cards with them. They don't have, when you're traveling across the desert for weeks, you have to balance between, I want to carry this much money and I want to carry this much food. Because if you carry all of your wealth, 3 days into the travel, you're going to die. There's no water in the desert. And if you carry only food, by the time you get to Medina, that's it, you're done. You need money to live. So these people are kicked out of their homes, only being able to take with what they can carry in their hands. They eventually get to Medina. And so they're in Medina, they find out that there is a business caravan that's passing through this area. And so they say, we're going to take what was rightfully ours. That which the Meccans stole from us, we're going to take back. And so they decide to go and take that caravan. They get there and the caravan is gone. The business caravan is gone. The Quraysh hear about this. And so they armor up. They say, that's it, we're coming for war. And Abu Jahl, the wretched human being he was, made sure that this was not just a small battle. He gathered all of the leading tribes in Quraysh, and every single one of them was represented on that day. They came armed to the teeth, 1,000 soldiers. I spoke briefly about the Pledge of Allegiance between Yathrib and the Prophet Muhammad, between the city of Medina, the people of Medina, the Ansar, and the Prophet. That pledge, it dictated that if an army comes to attack the city of Medina, then the Meccans, the refugees, and the Ansar will work together to defend Medina. But if there is a threat outside of the city of Medina, the Ansar do not have to participate. The Medinans do not have to participate. On that day, there was 313 Sahaba exactly. 240 of them were Ansar. And only about 70 were from the Muhajirun. And so they're outside of the city. They're not in Medina, because remember they went to the caravan. And so the Prophet said, and he looks at the Ansar and he says, you guys don't have to be here. This is not part of our agreement. And this is when they unsheath their swords and they say, Ya Rasulullah, if you were to walk to the edge of the ocean and walk in, we would walk with you, Ya Rasulullah. These were the Ansar. And so you have 13 years of persecution, of torture, of torment, boycotts, death. What you would consider a loss after a loss, after a loss, after a loss. And then in that state, the Battle of Badr happens. We all know the outcome of Badr. The Muslims come out victorious. And so can you imagine now the state of the Muslims at that moment? How they must have felt. 13 years. And you finally get one win. One good day. One day when the tide was in your favor. They're shaking from excitement. And in this state, they start running to go get the spoils of war. They start running. The Quraysh, they flee. The Quraysh, they retreat. And they start running to get the spoils of war. And you know what happens when you get excited and this and that? You start to see, you go through struggle. You start to see a little bit of that dunya in front of you, and what happened? They started to fight. You see the humanity of the Sahaba. They started to fight and argue. Who's going to get more? Some of them said, the brains, the people that helped organize all of this, the people who strategized, they're going to get more. And other people said, no. The people with the muscle, the people who did more in the battle, those people will get more. Other people said, no. The people who sacrificed more, those people will get more. Some people said, no. The people who need more will get more. And so they start arguing. It is at that moment that this surah is revealed. So now you understand the context. The Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنْفَالِ. They ask you about the spoils of war. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now, He does, look at the tarbiyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now teaching the Sahaba. He says, قُلِ الْأَنْفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Tell them that the spoils of war belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul. Nothing is for you. The Sahaba are like, kind of thrown it back. But look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will learn later on in ayah number 49, we won't cover it today. But in ayah 41, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, everyone will get a portion, an equal portion. That's discussed, different subject for a different day. But the first thing that Allah says is you don't get anything. To wake them up. Because the objective was not the money that you were getting. The objective was not the spoils. What was the objective? It was the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The objective was the deen. Your goal wasn't to get rich. When you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, bless me and bless my family with wealth. The objective is not the wealth. The hope is that you have wealth to live comfortably, to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comfortably. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with money to pay your bills, to have a nice house, that you can live comfortably as a Muslim. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them of it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ. Be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ, and stop arguing. You're forgetting the point. It's not about who has this much money, who has this business, who gets this, who gets that, who's better here, who's better. Stop. That's all of us here today as well. Stop bickering back and forth. My family is better because we come from this side. My family is better, we come from this country. I know this, I do this. Wake up. Wake up. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Fattaqullah. Be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's your goal. Every single one of us here today has the same goal. Earn your Jannah and earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. That's your ultimate goal. We're all working towards the same thing. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, and follow the command of Allah and His Messenger. إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ, if indeed you are believers. So this whole lesson is for whom? The believers. But the question arises, who is a believer? How do you know if you've checked off all of those boxes? The main lesson of this khutbah is now in these next two ayat. This is the main lesson, so pay attention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now lists off what does it mean to be a believer. What does it mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, those who believe. Who are they? الَّذِينَ, they are إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Here's the first description. When they are reminded of Allah, وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ, their hearts tremble. Wajilat. Wajila in the Arabic language, it means for something to, like, tremble is the best word, but to like shrink in, to really humble itself. Have you ever seen, like a cartoon, when you have the little character, it runs in front of this big object and it kind of like shrinks into its boots like out of fear. This is what wajila means. To be just in awe. To be in awe. To tremble in the presence of something. To tremble in the presence of something. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who are the believers? They are those, when they hear the mention of God, they hear the mention of Allah, وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ, they are trembled. They are in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when I'm angry and I hear someone say, remember Allah, it humbles me. My anger subsides. When I'm doing this, that, or the other, and I hear Allah, I'm put back into my place. This is the first description. The second, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. The second description, and when the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the ayat, when the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are recited upon this person, when the Quran is recited upon this person, زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا, they are increased in faith. It builds them. So you see, look, this is the relationship. We hear the mention of Allah and we tremble in the awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we hear those verses and it builds us back up as the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. Your faith is increased when you read the Quran. This is the second description. Right? Third, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. And upon their Lord, they trust. They have full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Full trust. That whatever is to happen, is to happen. It is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, how do you know whether or not you have trust in Allah? One thing is an easy measure. And that is stress. The trust of Allah eliminates stress. What did I say? Did I say it eliminates hard work? No. Does it eliminate effort? No. What does it eliminate? Stress. Trusting Allah doesn't mean I'm not going to work hard at my job or in my career or at school or in my relationships. That's not what it means. It means I'm going to do my job and then leave the rest to Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says those are the believers who have full and complete trust in Allah. The scholars mention tawakkul is embodied with one statement, and that is ar-rida bit-taqdeer. That you are truly happy with whatever has come to you, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for you. This is tawakkul. Now, this first half has been descriptions of the believers that have to do with the heart, inside. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there's a few descriptions of the outside. And we'll conclude with this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those who establish their salah and they give in charity from what we've given. One thing to note, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, mimma, from what has been given to you. Not everything. Don't forget your family. Don't forget yourself. Live comfortably. Live. Go for the parts of the dunya that you would like to have. It's fine. But from that, make sure a portion goes to charity. Helping the needy. Educating the community. Right? This is part of sadaqah. These are the outwardly descriptions. Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا. Those are the true believers. Those are the true believers. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us in this first portion of Surah Al-Anfal what it means to be a believer. We are at a turning point in most of our lives. Many of us may not see this again, in the sense that we are now, alhamdulillah, at the end of a decade. The end of a decade. Many of us may not see the next decade. And so a lot of times when we come to the end of the year, we think to ourselves, what did we do the previous year? And what will we work on the next year? I encourage all of you to think broader than that. The truth is, 1 year, you get to do some work, but maybe not so much. 10 years is a big change. And so think about who you were 10 years ago and how much real change has come about. Real change. What is the state of your Iman in the past 10 years? Have you grown? Have you fell? What is the state of your family relationships, etc., etc.? And now plan for the next 10 years. Build accordingly. Build that Iman. This Iman that Allah was speaking about, it doesn't happen overnight. It comes with constant work. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us all mu'mineen, true and complete believers. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us to focus on building and improving ourselves. Ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He unites us all in the highest levels of Jannah, neighboring the Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawm al-din. Allahumma ij'alna minhum wa min alladhina amanu wa 'amilu s-salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Allahumma amin. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم. Remember Allah and He will remember you. وَادْعُوهُ يَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Call out to Allah and He will answer you. وَلَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. And the remembrance of Allah is the greatest thing that you can do. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا تَصْنَعُونَ. And Allah is fully aware what each and every single one of us is doing. وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ.